confirmed that there was indeed a woman who was with the shooter in the footage that was captured by the houses nearby the area. And for whatever reason, the FBI has not yet released or even acknowledged that that footage exists. I just want to say that I feel like at the beginning of this investigation, I was very clear. I said there will be no fakeness and there will be no gayness in this investigation. And apparently there were some people who did not take me seriously or literally, because there are a lot of little lies being told, right? Charlie gets assassinated and the very people who were threatening him reputationally and financially are now trying to memorialize.
Something about Charlie Kirk's story carries a chill that won't fade. The puzzle fits together too cleanly, like someone scrubbed away the mess. Every jagged question was buried before it could ever breathe. And then, without warning, Candace Owens shattered the silence with a single, devastating confession. She had seen what Charlie tried to erase. Unmarked pages, hidden confessions, words soaked in secrets that were never meant to reach the light. What those pages revealed changed everything.
Watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is...
Something about Charlie Kirk's story has always felt off. The puzzle pieces didn't fall into place. They were forced to fit. Every jagged edge, every unanswered question, quietly swept away long before anyone could even ask. And then, from the shadows, Candace Owens whispered the words that cracked everything wide open. She had seen what Charlie left behind. Not speeches, not statements, secrets. Torn pages soaked in private fears, inked truths he never wanted the world to see. Let's just say, if even half of it's real, we've all been staring at the wrong story. For years, Charlie Kirk stood like a monument. Sharp suit, steel posture, words like arrows. To the crowd, he wasn't just confident, he was untouchable. Every stage, every flashbulb, every headline painted the same immaculate portrait: control. But beneath that polished armor, the people closest to him saw something no camera ever caught. Missed calls that went unanswered. Messages left hanging in the dark. His voice pausing mid-sentence like it had drifted somewhere far from the room. Then came the questions, quiet, careful, almost too fragile to speak aloud. Questions about loyalty, about trust, about what really happened when the lights went out and the applause faded. Outsiders called it stress. Insiders felt the tremor beneath his words. A heaviness, a warning. Weeks before everything began to unravel, he reportedly told someone he trusted, "I don't know who's on my side anymore." No anger, no panic, just that cold, creeping unease, the kind that whispers instead of screams. And once it whispers, you can't unhear it. He smiled for the cameras. He shook hands like everything was fine. But those who looked closely saw it. That smile had changed. It wasn't pride anymore. It was survival. Something was closing in. He felt it, just not how close it already was. Then Candace Owens detonated the silence. No fiery rant. No theatrics. Just a quiet, trembling voice. She had seen something she was never meant to see. Charlie's private journals. Page after page of raw, unfiltered thoughts that didn't sound like the man the world thought they knew. For months, she kept it buried. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of guilt. But something shifted, and when she finally spoke, the internet stopped breathing. She said Charlie wrote about feeling unsafe in his own home, not because of strangers, but because someone he trusted was starting to move like stranger. He felt watched, followed, studied. The words were soft but soaked in fear. Candace didn't name names. She didn't have to. Everyone could feel the unspoken target hanging in the air. The final entries were the most chilling. They were dated just days before everything snapped. In those lines, Charlie didn't sound paranoid. He sounded terrified. A man cornered not by shadows, but by truth. And that single unspoken name behind his words sent a current through the crowd. Candace's voice didn't rise. It cracked, like someone carrying a secret too heavy for too long. Then came the sentence that made the world shiver. If people knew what he really wrote, they would never see things the same way again. In that instant, this wasn't just a story about loss anymore. It was a story about something buried alive. When Candace finally opened the journal on stream, the noise died instantly. No hashtags, no build-up, just her voice and Charlie's words. Lately, I feel like my own house doesn't belong to me. 7 plain words, but they landed like a hammer. He described shadows moving where no one should be. whispers bleeding through the silence. The sick, suffocating feeling of being watched, studied by someone close. Candace said his handwriting didn't rage. It sagged. It sounded like a man exhausted from pretending. And then came the line that shattered hearts. "I still love her, but I don't know if she'll be there for me." It wasn't the voice of a firebrand. It was the whisper of a man breaking. The internet detonated overnight. Screenshots, graphs, handwriting comparisons, conspiracy threads climbing like wildfire. And the darkest part? The entries were written right before everything happened. Charlie wrote about smiles that were just a little too wide, questions that brought dangerous silence, and how something he uncovered made him wish he had looked. The last words trailed off. No goodbye. No final message. Just unfinished ink. Candace ended the stream without drama. No hashtags. No trending bait. Just silence and a warning that didn't sound like gossip. It sounded like a eulogy. And then, just as the internet began to calm, Joe Rogan stepped in. Not with fury. Not with accusations. Just questions. The kind that make the room colder. And that's when the story stopped being a headline and started becoming something far, far bigger. Something about this moment felt wrong. The way Joe Rogan spoke wasn't loud, wasn't frantic. It was quiet. Controlled. The kind of calm that makes a room colder. He wasn't ranting. He was dissecting. Like a man who's seen enough dirty stories to know when the script doesn't match the crime. He pointed out the fractures nobody else dared to name. Surveillance footage that didn't line up. Reports stamped final way too fast. Loose ends sewn shut overnight, as if someone didn't want daylight creeping in. But the part that froze everyone? Joe said he'd seen the suspect's photo. A clean-cut 22-year-old. But the image felt wrong. Too neat. Too staged. The background looked like a studio set. The light almost cinematic. And the object in his hand? It didn't match the official report. Joe leaned forward, voice dropping low. "This isn't a moment caught. It's a scene designed." His co-host laughed it off. Joe didn't. He leaned closer to the mic and whispered, "This story feels like a movie script that got rewritten halfway through." For a long second, nobody spoke. That silence said more than any theory ever could. He didn't have proof, just instinct. But that's what made it dangerous. If someone outside the circle could sense the glitch, what did that mean for those trapped inside it? And that's when the storm began. Hours after Joe's episode went live, Candace Owens reappeared, and her timing wasn't coincidence. What she said next turned whispers into thunder. People online started noticing something unsettling. A single man. A face that didn't belong, but was always there. Grainy footage resurfaced. Blurred backgrounds. Random crowd shots. Different cities. Different years. And yet, there he was. Same face. Same eerie stillness. Like a shadow stitched into history itself. Some said it was coincidence. Others saw the outline of a pattern, a man who hovered. Near chaos, blended in, then evaporated. And when the day Charlie's story broke, witnesses claimed they saw him again, yelling nonsense, pulling everyone's eyes away just before the moment everything changed. No records. No interviews. Just gone. Like smoke. Then came the terrifying part. People traced this same face back decades. To national moments, protests, tragedies, political implosions, always close, never center stage, like a ghost in the margins. Rogan called him the ghost of chaos. Candace called him the distraction. Charlie, in his notes, called him the watcher. And that single word cracked the internet in half. Because if Charlie had written about this man before the world saw him, it meant he'd been aware of something long before it exploded. That's when theories stopped sounding like paranoia and started feeling like warnings. Some said this man was no random drifter. He was placed, a planted distraction, someone who existed to bend the narrative before the truth could breathe. And when people started asking who he was, everything shifted again. The next question was the one nobody wanted to answer. What exactly was Charlie working on before everything fell apart? Candace had the answer. According to her, Charlie wasn't writing speeches. He wasn't preparing for rallies. He was digging. Deep. He quietly signed off on something most people never touch. An internal audit. Not a friendly one. A real one. The kind that shines light in places no one wants lit. He asked about budgets. Private meetings. Money trails that had gone untracked for years. He signed the official authorization days before his world imploded. And after that signature, everything about him changed. He locked his laptop. Changed his passwords. Questioned who had access to what. He wasn't paranoid. He was preparing. Candace swore she'd seen the line he wrote in those last pages of his journal. 16 words that made her skin crawl. Some people are not going to like what I'm about to find. 16 words. That's all. But it felt like a match flicked inside a room full of gasoline. He'd stepped on something explosive. People around him began acting strange. Colder. Distant. As if they already knew what he was about to uncover. And then, everything started to fracture. After Charlie's disappearance, all eyes turned toward one person, his wife, Erica Kirk. She had always been painted as the steady hand behind the storm. Loyal. Unshakable. Every photo captured them as a perfect match. But when the smoke cleared, something about her presence felt different. She didn't disappear. She rose. Fast. Too fast. Within days, she was leading meetings, standing behind the same podium Charlie once claimed as his own, delivering speeches that felt rehearsed, polished, prepared. Headlines called it resilience. But the whispers online said otherwise. Candace struck again, this time holding one more piece of Charlie's diary. A fragment everyone else ignored. In it, Charlie wrote, "Decisions are being made without my voice. Meetings I'm not invited to are moving forward anyway." He never wrote her name. He didn't have to. The timing matched the exact weeks Erica had started attending those key meetings alone. Candace didn't accuse. She didn't need to. Her final line cut like a blade. Sometimes the people closest to you aren't standing beside you. They're standing behind you. The internet fractured. Some called Erica a grieving widow. Others saw something colder. Every clip of her on camera was dissected like evidence. Every blink, every pause, every polished answer became a question mark. Was she carrying his legacy or taking his throne? Meanwhile, inside the organization, the temperature dropped overnight. Staff whispered about meetings behind locked doors, projects that vanished off the books, conversations that ended when someone walked into the room. One insider described it like this. It felt like walking on glass. Everyone knew something was wrong. No one dared to say it. Then came the reports, audit files missing from the system. Emails wiped clean. Access logs reset. Even the financial team went dark. No replies. No statements. Just silence. Candace Owens wasn't shocked. Her voice, calm and unflinching, said what no one else would. This wasn't the end of Charlie's story. It was the cover-up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She just stared into the camera, unwavering, and said the line that cut through the noise like a blade. Some stories are never told properly because the truth isn't hidden. It's replaced. No shouting. No theatrics. Just certainty. And in that moment, the entire narrative cracked open. What once felt like a tragedy now smelled like something else entirely, a cover-up. The deeper people dug, the worse it got. Deleted footage. Vanished signatures. Timelines that bent and blurred like someone had rewritten history with a trembling hand. Every inconsistency whispered the same thing. Charlie hadn't just been unraveling. He'd found something. And whatever that was, it got buried with him. Candace ended that final broadcast with one last sentence. Soft, steady, unforgettable. If Charlie wrote it, then we owe him at least one question. What was he trying to tell us? It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a dare. A quiet, unshakable demand for answers in a story that refuses to die. Maybe the real question isn't what happened to Charlie Kirk. Maybe it's why it happened. Because somewhere between those torn diary pages, the missing audit, and the silence that followed like a storm held back, the truth is still breathing. Hidden, waiting, watching. Was Charlie just a man buckling under pressure? Or did he stumble onto something no one was supposed to see? Every torn note, every corrupted file, every carefully timed silence feels less like coincidence, and more like a message begging to be cracked. Maybe the truth wasn't erased. Maybe it was rewritten. And this mystery? It's far from over. With each new leak, each file that vanishes, each word Candace dares to let slip, the picture keeps shifting, like a puzzle rearranging itself in the dark. The question that began as a whisper is now a roar. If Charlie was trying to warn us, what was he really trying to say? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every single one. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because when the next piece of the story breaks, you'll want to be the first to see how deep it really goes.